I love your little pillow that says blessed. That's the
we,
cutest.
we
That one says thank you, but it's
Ah.
wrong.
I love this because we're live and people get to see the happy banter going on behind the scenes, which is blessed. And did you say okay on the other one?
Thankful.
Thankful.
When I make my bed, those are the two words that uh, greet greet the rest of my day.
I love that. I was just going to say, quick hello to Kim and Linda who just joined in. I'm so glad to see you guys. We love you. Welcome to the Mango Publishing Heart Wisdom Panel, one of my favorite places to be in the world, with some of the best people in the world. I'm so happy. Oh, look, Jonathan's here.
Yay!
Yay! I'm so happy to be here with Mary Anne Radmacher. And can we just call you M? Is that okay?
Please do.
Author of Live with Intention, and Jonathan Robinson, Life's Big Questions. Both of them, of course, other books as well. But welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Sorry I was late.
Your collar looks great, Jonathan. Frames you in blue beautifully.
And also, big welcome to Brenda, publisher of Mango Publishing. Yay! You guys, I just have to say, I have been so excited about this conversation. I was reviewing, I've read M's book before, and I just had the pleasure of reading Jonathan's book. And I just got so excited because we're talking about how we can find more meaning by asking and responding to the big questions, whether it's by ourselves or with people we love, or even with strangers. I loved your story, Jonathan, about when you were at a cocktail party and, launched some amazing conversation with a big question. So we're going to be looking at that. Before we launch into all that, though, and even before I have Em and Jonathan introduce themselves, Jonathan has offered to do a short meditation to kind of get us here, because we're going to be looking at big questions. We want to be present. So
Absolutely.
Take it away, Jonathan.
Okay, well, this will just take a minute or two. That's a nice way to center yourself. If you can, close your eyes. If not, that's fine. And if you can, put your hand over the middle of your chest, because we often forget to feel our heart. And as you do, take a deep breath. And then think of a person or animal that you have great affection for. Or it could be a young child, but someone that comes to mind that you really have a heart connection with. And remember special times with this being, times of fun and love. And just breathe into the feeling of how grateful you are that they're in your life. And feel how wonderful it is to have this feeling of love and connection. And if it helps, feel free to imagine hugging them or holding them. You can imagine telling them how much they mean to you and seeing how happy that makes them. And give them one last feeling of hug and connection from your heart. And when you're ready, take your time, slowly come back to the room, feel how it feels to be centered in your heart, and then very, very slowly begin to open your eyes.
What a beautiful, beautiful way to get here. Thank you, Jonathan. Oh, hi, Karen. Glad you're here too. It's beautiful to see you. Well, we are just going to have some amazing conversation. But before we launch into that, why don't I have, and we'll start with you, if you would give us an introduction. And I have a special request for when you guys are introducing yourselves. Will you tell us if there's a big question that you're currently holding in your own life?
I will.
Okay.
I was on a tour of a city that I adore but know very little about. I was with a dozen people I didn't know, and there was a 7-year-old boy named Theodore. Theodore, when he wasn't with his parents, he was with me, even though we hadn't spoken. I'm grateful in my life that children and animals feel comfortable around me. And he asked a question, and then he asked another question, and the tour guide kept saying, does anyone have questions? And Theodore was the only human in the group that had the audacity to ask questions that, as a matter of fact, I saw on the adults' faces that he asked things that they wanted to know but didn't want to speak up. And so I slipped to the back of the group where his two parents were watching him, and I said, my kindergarten teacher told me, or wrote on my report card, Mary Anne needs to learn to let other students ask questions. And I said to both of them in a conspiratorial tone, I never did. Theodore isn't bothering you? And I said, I would be delighted to have Theodore lead this tour. I'm Mary Anne Radmacher, who all of my life has asked an inordinate amount of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the big question that I'm pondering in this time in my life is, when people tell me that I shouldn't plan on living alone, my question is, why not? Why not plan on living alone? I like my own company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking questions about the romantic element that so many people in my circle seem to want me to have. That's my big question in the moment.
Can I give you an answer?
Oh,
Yeah. So my mom is 96. She lives alone, drives, she does her own cooking, she gets her own groceries, she goes to church, she is fine. I mean, her mobility is, she's getting a little stiff in the legs, so she needs to use a cane. That only started like this year. And she loves her own company, and she is very good company. And I mean, she is a painter, so she's a creative like you. And also something I started noticing some years ago is that like my mom gets smarter, like she does, like she, she gets sharper, honestly, she does. And so I just think like, wow, like there is my role model, like just rock and roll. And like, she's been pretty good at self-care. I'm sure you're excellent at self-care. I know you're extremely good company. So I think that just like, I would just think when people say that they're wanting to be helpful, but they just don't know anyone like my mom yet.
thank you, Brenda.
I love that, Brenda. Thank you. I know. And my take on it was also like, wow, you must be surrounded by love.
I am.
All these caring people. So thank you you always bring beautiful stories too. So I appreciate that greatly. Jonathan, welcome. I'm so excited. I haven't met you, but I feel like, of course, people probably always say this to you, right? I feel like I know you from all your stories in your book.
Yeah.
So same thing, if you would please just give us an introduction, and the same question, if it's okay, if you have a big question you're kind of holding in your life right now.
Yeah, a question that's really served me and also people I know is, what's my next step of growth?
Yeah.
I ask that a lot because it's always changing. And what, I used to work on 10 years ago is very different than what life or the universe seems to be directing me towards right now. And if you don't know the answer to that, usually your mate or your friends will tell you what your next step is.
I love that. And Jonathan, do you want to give us, I mean, in case there are people out there who haven't had the pleasure of reading your book
Mhm.
yet, or your books, just a quick, like, how did you get to where you are right here?
Well, I was a psychotherapist, and one day I asked, how can I serve people? And to my surprise, I heard a voice in my head that said, take notes. So I got out a pen and paper, and I kept on hearing were these questions. So I'm writing down these questions from God knows where, and then it ended up with like 200 questions at the end of this process. And then I said, well, what do I do with this? And the voice said, it's a book. Well, long story short, Canary Press ended up publishing that book. 6 months later, Oprah got hold of the book and devoted some shows to the book. So, that was crazy. And I thought, well, I'll just keep listening to whatever that inner voice is and see where it takes me. So it's been good to me.
Ah, wow. It's been good to the world too, right? Thank goodness.
Yeah, I've been able to, get a lot of good questions and a lot of good techniques out there to people.
I love that. I love that. And I know, Em, or at least I project the same thing. Like, you've put so much out into the world as well. And Brenda, this is a good time to introduce you and bring you into this, right? Because it's like you're the midwife to all this goodness that we have going. Do you want to say hi, introduce yourself, say anything about these two wonderful people?
Yes. Well, hello to everyone, including people in the chat and listening in and watching. I'm so glad you're all here. And these authors from the Canary side of things, there's like, Mango and Canary. And Canary authors have like a special place in my heart. Like, we feel like family, because it's been going on for like some years now. And like, so I see some family members in the chat. And so I'm so glad that we're doing Heart Wisdom, still. I know it was born like the month the pandemic happened, just to stay connected. But these connections are so important. And I've been really looking forward to today and this topic of like big questions, because like what's been going on in my mind is like, the news is so crazy right now that like I try to stay detached from it, but like it's hard to. So like, I feel like there's noise out there trying to distract us from the big questions of what really matters. So how do you listen to what matters and not the noise? That is my question to these two brilliant, wise people.
That's a great question. And I think one that everybody should be asking nowadays, because, the old thing, garbage in, garbage out. And if you are too aware or too inundated with what I call WMDs, which are widgets of mass distraction, then you end up feeling like the world's a terrible place and there's all this drama. But in actuality, the world is, we live better than kings lived 100 years ago. So that's another point of view that I was recently, our electricity here went out for 12 days due to a snowstorm. And I was awed by the fact that people lived without electricity, because it was freezing cold and food spoiled and I couldn't communicate. So, the fact that we have so much is a way to counterbalance, and feeling grateful for what we have is a way to counterbalance. And I limit the amount of time that I spend on social media or news to like 5 minutes a day, so that it doesn't overwhelm us. We're not able to take in all that information. And in reality, life, if you are just in your life and you go to the store and there's 20,000 items and there's heat and electricity in your house, things are actually pretty good.
I just recently asked the question of myself, what is my responsibility as a single human being in the face of the political environment that we experience here in the US? And of course, our environment in the US is very different than it is in other parts of the world. I am holding myself to a standard of kindness in a manner that I never have. And so I am communicating that I am not going to be posting memes that suggest that someone should be locked up, which doesn't mean I don't believe that the consequence of justice should be carried forward in an objective way. I do. But I do not want to cover or garment myself with the triggers and the animosity and the exposure to the gaslighting that I know is detrimental to my own soul. So how can I embrace my citizenship and my ire and my anger at the same time as embracing kindness and being aligned with my own personal values? And that is to ask the question, what is it that is mine to do? What is it that is mine to do? And can I calm the waters of the people who are anxious and hysterical and brokenhearted about the place that our country finds itself in? I know that I cannot dissuade anyone from their deeply held beliefs. It's deeper. I mean, maybe you can, Jonathan, because you are trained in the life of the mind and spirit. But so my anger lives alongside my commitment to kindness by putting things in context, reminding people about my experience with Richard Nixon and about the graft from the Civil War and about, our history is filled with contradictions, and we are living in a time of contradiction. So that's how I manage it. It's not my job to watch television all day or read news all day. It's my job to inspire myself first and others. And so I do that in the most responsible way that I can, taking in the amount of news that I'm able to before it tips me over.
So both of you, so beautiful. And I just wanted to add to what you both said that I too feel like, especially according to what you were just saying, is that when I ask myself, like, what am I here to do? My answer is, I want to bring light and love. And in order to do that, I do think part of it, and this is what I love so much about Jonathan's book, is I think part of it is gently and kindly encouraging other people to ask these questions, right? Mm-hmm. That I think asking questions and being an encourager of questions, which is why I'm so excited about this today. It's one of the ways that we do bring more light and love. I don't know about you guys, and maybe I'd love to hear if you have anything to say about this, but I feel like if we give ourselves the space and we're asking the kinds of questions that are, listed, the 200 that are in Jonathan's book for sure, and the many questions, Em, that you bring up in your writings, I think it would be impossible for people not to feel kindness toward themselves and others. What do you guys think? Am I just deluded?
Well, what you said was that questions have a way of like bypassing people's defenses. If you ask a good question, it gets them focused in the right direction. I do a lot of volunteer work in prisons, in which I teach meditation, and the wardens are always amazed about what they hear about those sessions, because sometimes a lot of people are there and they really have a good time. And mostly what I do is I ask them questions. I don't lecture to them. I sometimes lead meditations, but mostly we talk about questions. A question like, so what's the most miraculous thing you've ever experienced? And people focus, or what are you grateful for? Even in prison, people can feel gratitude. Or what's the nicest thing somebody has done for you in the last week? And as people focus on these questions and higher topics, that actually changes them. I talked to a guy yesterday. It was just me and three other people, and they were all murderers. You know, but the questions we were discussing made us all feel connected. And, you know, I could have labeled them as being bad people, but in that moment, they were as heartfelt as I was. And I think we need to bring out the best parts of ourselves by asking better questions.
Oh, I love that. I mean, and I guess that's been my experience too. I recently started a project where I ask people, strangers and friends and whomever, what they love about their life. And inevitably, I don't
Can I
care what.
steal that question for my next book?
Yes, of course. Right, because inevitably, first of all, it changes our conversation level from, you know, transactional, you know, usually it's people at stores or whatever, but I don't care what their politics are. I don't care what their religion is. I don't care how much money they make or anything. When people are talking about what they love, it's like, just like you said, Jonathan, right? There's just this connection to, you know, you see people light up. And I think that's why this conversation about big questions is so important.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite questions, and I apologize, one of the reasons I was late a couple minutes today is I was taking my dog to the groomer and they had a little bit of problem there. But, you know, when you ask people about what animal they have ever loved, you see them light up because we don't have baggage with animals so much, our dogs or cats. You know, you might with a partner, but what I will say, well, tell me about your dog or tell me about your cat. And it just like illuminates people's heart. It's really beautiful to watch.
I don't know if you could see the comments, but Kim, who's one of our authors, she's watching, and she said when you did the meditation, she focused on her dog, and she said that made me cry in a good way. You know, I project that cry as just like love and connection. Yeah.
When I worked with felons in a medium security prison, people always asked me, why do you teach in schools and you teach in prisons? Why do you do that? And they know where their barbed wire is. They know where their walls are. And they were a more open-hearted group of individuals year after year than just my average register and take a class of strangers, because they were painfully aware of where their freedom stopped. And so they were more inclined to be introduced to asking questions. Many of them gave me feedback, and perhaps you've gotten this too, Jonathan, that if they had been asked these types of questions when they were 10 or when they were young people, they felt like they would have had a different sort of life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very asking questions and empowering people to turn to their own list of questions is such a powerful tool.
Well, I'm wondering if this might be a good time. I know that you each brought just a little something to share of your writing. And does this feel like this might be a good time? Em, do you want to?
I will, but I defer to you, Jonathan, if you have selected your piece.
Well, this is a story I like from the book. I'll tell two brief stories. One is, you know, I never had a very deep connection with my dad growing up because I only got to see him like once every 2 weeks after a divorce. And, you know, I was into spiritual stuff and he was an accountant. And I always wanted to share my world with him, but, you know, he didn't really go there. He didn't want to listen to that. But one day I asked him the question, Dad, have you ever had something unusual happen to you, like a psychic experience? And to my amazement, he had a few of these, but had never shared them. And soon he's talking to me about all these weird things that happened to him early in his life. At the end, he says, you know, when you think about these things, it makes you think that there's more than what meets the eye going on. Have you ever thought about this stuff, Jonathan? And you know, I was a psychic studies major at UC Santa Barbara, so I had had a few moments of studying these things, but that opened up a whole realm of our exploring together some of these things, and not necessarily coming to any answers, but the questions opened up a connection between us. And that one's really sweet. And that story's in the book. But another story, in terms of a question that really changed my life, is I went to see this guru in India named Papaji, and he had me sit in front of him, and he looked at me, he had sparkling eyes. He got real close and he goes, "Who are you?" Well, I didn't know what the protocol was. So I said, "I'm Jonathan Robinson from the United States." And he and the other people in the room just started laughing. And I thought, well, that was the wrong answer. So he said, no, who are you really? And I said, well, you know, I'm a writer. And he kind of shook his head no. And I said, well, I'm a spiritual seeker. And he shook his head no. And I'm a husband. And we did this for like 2 minutes. I ran out of roles actually after a while. And then I just looked in his eyes and he said, "Who are you really?" And I was just silent. And then I felt this strange sensation in my chest. And it was a little fearful, but I decided to just relax with it. And then what happened next surprised me. I was hit by what could be called a tsunami of love emanating from his eyes. And I broke down and started weeping. And this had never happened to me before. So I'm weeping in his lap. And he pats me on the head like this. And he says, "This love that you feel, that's who you are. And your job is to get back there as best you can." So I think that's who we are. And questions and other things can point us in the right direction. And that lesson has never really left me.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
This is a story from Dream and Do What You Love from Live with Intention. I traveled for the first time to Europe in 1985 by myself with every dime that I owned strapped to a money belt around my rib cage. It was nylon and it was so uncomfortable. Metaphor alert, being aware of all of my earthly resource was a real burden. I went to the same day discount ticket counter in Leicester Square there in London and bought what I thought was one ticket for Les Miserables. And it was for that night. I went back to the hotel and I looked and I had 2 tickets. So there was a young Russian philosophy student, go picture that, a fella, very serious. And I offered the ticket to him and he said, "It is a musical. It is a frivolity. It is a dreadful waste of human energy. And you will not find me there." And I said, how do you feel about throwing money away and wasting resources? And he said, "It's an abomination." And I said, "I will throw this ticket away. Or you can give me a sense of safety on the West End of London as a single young lady and come to Les Miserables with me." At the end of the show, tears were streaming down this Russian philosophy student's face. And when they came back for their curtain call, he rose up and he threw his arms in the air and he was cheering and weeping and they came for curtain call after curtain call. It was the original cast of Les Miserables. And It was that long ago. And we left the theater and he said, I don't know how to thank you for your question about wastefulness.
Mhm.
One simple, it wasn't a big question, was it, Jonathan? It was a simple question,
Mhm.
a very ordinary question, but
Sometimes those are the best.
sometimes they are. The big ones look small.
Mhm.
What I love about what both of you are pointing to with this is also the complete lack of blame, of shame, of finger pointing, right? Like the thing about these questions is they just, it seems like they come from a pure place, right? So I'm projecting that it's like with your dad, Jonathan. I love that story, right? That it's like, you weren't demanding that he be different or talk to you about certain things. You just asked some questions and it opened a door. Same
Mhm.
am with you, right? It's like a question.
There-
Kids are curious, and every 4-year-old's curious, but not many adults are curious. And I think the best questions just come from our simple curiosity.
Theodore.
Haha, Theodore.
Yeah. And I do, Jonathan, tell me if you think this is possible, that adults are curious and they lack the confidence or the courage to admit that they don't know.
Yeah,
Mm.
I agree. And they're maybe afraid of being embarrassed and vulnerable to ask that question that they're already thinking.
Yes. And we can't all hang around with 4-year-olds or 7-year-olds all the time to depend on them to ask what we're thinking.
Right.
You guys, I'm going to admit something to you right now I've been playing around with AI a little bit. And I thought, oh, I'm going to ask, I could just call it my AI buddy, ChatGPT. And I asked it, what keeps people from asking the big questions that could really be meaningful in their lives? And there were actually a couple things that I thought were really helpful. One is distraction, which we already talked about, right? So we already talked about, what do you call them again, Jonathan? The
Widgets of mass distraction, or
right,
WMDs.
right. The other two things that my AI friend said that I thought was really good. One of them was that people can feel uncomfortable in the unknown, in not
Mhm.
knowing something, which I think is what you two just were pointing to.
Mhm.
And the other thing that AI said was that sometimes if we ask big questions, it can lead to answers that shake up our ideas of who we are.
Mhm.
And that too kind of struck me. Like I can see that in my own life, especially as a younger person, when there was this sense of I have to have this identity. So I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out to see, how's that sound to you two? Or do you think there are other also like really big reasons why we don't ask these questions?
Well, I think, well, why don't you begin, Mary Anne? I've been going first.
Well, thank you. No one wants to go first. No one wants to get in line first at the buffet line. No one wants to be the first individual in a room to admit that they don't know something. And when I teach corporate groups, I have really awesome rewards, gifts I'm not that what I make isn't awesome, but I mean, I bring gifts that I purchase that I would want myself to give away when the first person asks the uncomfortable question. Reward. And then randomly, when someone asks a question, I'll put their name in a drawing. And halfway through my presentation, we have a prize drawing for the people that had the nerve to stand up and say, I do not know the answer to this. Wow. And ask. So I don't reward knowledge that's already held and shared. I reward people who are smart enough and know enough to ask the question.
It's a great idea.
Use it.
Yeah.
That reminds me of something that I haven't thought about for years, but when I was my very first job in publishing at HarperCollins, Harper San Francisco, which was like the philosophy, religious, and like we published like every kind of like spiritual book in the world, like from Wicca to like super Christian. And so there was a Sufi book. I think it was like an important translation of Sufism that came in, and like this was like probably like something like 1994 or something. And I tried to read as many of these books as possible because they were free, and like so I read that like saying like there's levels of wisdom, and like the highest level of wisdom is to say you don't know that you don't know, like I don't know. So then like I took it very seriously, and so like in meetings like where people are pontificating and opining and making decisions and all this and that, like I would like, and it came to my turn and I would say, well I don't know, like, and then like if people were shocked by that, I would say like according to that we just published, like that's the highest form of wisdom. So anyway, it sort of caused like a kerfuffle because like people in publishing, they like to know, like they like to be the knowers of things, right? And so anyway, it was just like this funny thing, and I didn't stop the time I worked there. I kept it up because it sort of like goosed people a little bit, it like sort of like stopped them in a moment, and I think made them think. And then I just sort of like loved like that, like sometimes like the best thing you can say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Brenda, I love that. It's reminding me that one of my coaching clients is a teacher, and she is encouraging her students to ask questions. And also she loves to be in that response place of, I don't know, and she has a big board where she writes questions, and then they all, brainstorm about how to like look at what's the possible answers are together,
Right.
as a group. And it's the same thing that you're saying, Brenda, right? It's like that modeling of, I don't know. What have you?
Well, if you take that position, and most of us, we really don't know, like to get right down to it. But like that means you're open to wisdom, you're open to new information. Whereas if you're a know-it-all, like even a super nice know-it-all, like your mind is more closed to the new.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say, Jonathan?
Well, I was just thinking that one of the reasons people don't ask questions is that it can be a little bit embarrassing to admit that you don't know, or embarrassing that you have a curiosity about something. And one of the things I like about the Life's Big Questions book is it kind of gives people permission to ask questions. I'm not asking it, but here in this book, it says, what do you think happens after you die? And people then will actually bring it to a dinner table or something. And it's almost like the book is asking the questions for you, but it gets the conversation moving in that direction. And that's something I've actually used with my family. When my family gets together, they used to argue all the time. So then I would bring the book and I would just start asking people these questions. And everybody wants to share their opinion. They may not know anything, but at least they like to share their opinion. And instead of them arguing about something, they'd be talking about what happens after you die, or was Jesus the Messiah, or how can you know your real life purpose? All these questions. And it actually created more of a bond that we were focusing in that direction rather than just, competing philosophies or whatever.
Jonathan, your book is like a horizontal sculptural magic 8-ball.
Oh,
Really,
It can be.
I wanted to share a couple of things there. We have so many friends of ours who are watching right now. And Claudia said, which I think really speaks to what Jonathan was just sharing. She said, I believe questions from heartfelt curiosity for ourselves or others lives in the same space where kindness, gratitude, love are found. The idea is to find access to that deeper heart space and have the courage to get out of our head-based fears. I love that. And then Karen said, to admit we don't know is as courageous as speaking first. Both require vulnerability, and that's certainly to be applauded. So I love that. I love that we have this bigger conversation going on out there in the world, people joining in.
I always like to ask people, what question do you want to know the answer to? And that's an interesting question. Like if you could ask an omnipotent being, God, or whatever you conceive of that, one question, what would you want to know? And you can learn a lot about people. I used to use this on a dating app. You can learn a lot about people where their head's at by finding out what that question was. I remember there was one woman I was kind of interested in, and her answer was, what is the best type of makeup to use with my lipstick? And I said, oh, okay, well, nice knowing you. I'll never see you again.
Jonathan, if we were at a party right now and I asked you that question,
okay. Well, here's the question that I have come up with, or the answer for that one. What is the best focus for me to serve my own and other people's greater love and awakening? Beautiful. So I'd like to know the quickest way to help myself and other people. And if you know the answer to that, then you're moving forward.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. And I'm curious, can I ask you, Em and Brenda? Em, what would you answer that?
Ask the question.
What would you ask an omnipotent being? You have one question that you'll get the perfect answer for. What would that question be?
I'll stall for you. What is my highest best use? Which I think might be similar to yours. Yeah. But because I think it's publishing books that help people's lives, but just in case it's not, I would like to know.
What is my truest mirror to keep me aligned with my intention?
Ooh, I love this one.
What's interesting is that all of us came up with kind of a similar question. And if that's the question, then that should be really the question we're always asking ourselves and other people, because that's pointing us in a really good direction.
Well, and Karen, who's listening in, said, what's the most important assignment I have yet to complete? Similar. And I was going to share too, when I was contemplating us getting together, and I knew I was going to ask you guys the big question you're holding, I wanted to answer that for myself. And so for me, similarly, my big question that I'm holding right now is, how can I have the biggest impact on helping people feel the love that they are right now? And who can I partner with to really escalate that impact? So similar. I mean,
Very similar. Maybe we found the answer, because that seems to be the question that kind of everybody is moving towards. And I think if you ask any question with consistency and sincerity, you do get an answer within.
Oh, I love that.
Jonathan,
go ahead.
Are you familiar with the Quaker Clearness Committee process?
Yeah, a little bit. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about it until just a few years ago, but I replicated that process in my own writing, where I would write out a question and then pursue it and explore it and noodle around with it. And then I would say, so what else? Or what next? Or why is that? And so the writing would start here, and then it would go here and then here. And then I would get to something I had no idea. I mean, I wrote to discover what I deeply felt about the question I was facing.
That's
And
beautiful.
going deeper, asking, even if you wrote and always just asked, so what else could be true?
Mhm.
Oh,
And again and again, or is that really true? I think Byron Katie
yes.
encourages people to question themselves with, is that really true?
Mhm. I have a podcast called Awareness Explorers, in which I interview spiritual teachers like Byron Katie or Eckhart Tolle or Deepak Chopra, those types of people. And I've been surprised at how many of them, when I ask them what helped trigger your enlightenment or what helped trigger your awakening, they'll say that they wrote questions and then answered them. Like, what do I know is true? Or what has helped me to feel peace? Or what do I know helps to open my heart? And they would write down their answers, and then new questions would come up. And a lot of them have said that technique actually really helped their spiritual progression.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And it's life-changing when you introduce it to young people.
Mm.
It sets them on a different autonomous course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and similarly, Linda Allen was just echoing what you said, Em. I write to discover. And I feel that conversation with thoughtful people is similar, right? Like, that's why I love these heart wisdom panels, because inevitably it's not about, here, let me tell you what everything I know. I feel like what's happens is there's a lot of discovery. At least that's for me. What do you guys, Brenda? I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Well, I will sit down, like writing for me is like a ritual. So like, there's even like candle lighting and things like that and getting centered. And then sometimes I don't have exactly what I know, what I want to write, and I just let it come through me. So that doesn't always happen, but oftentimes it does. And then questions will come, and then I just keep pursuing the course that I'm set on.
So kind of a hybrid, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I do know one of the things that I love so much about you, Brenda, is that you often in these situations, you'll come out with some really interesting question that sometimes feels like it just comes up in the moment for you. Yeah.
Well, and Jonathan referenced that in his own discovery process, that he didn't get distracted by trying to identify the source of the voice.
Mm.
That really impressed me. He's like, okay, there's a voice.
It wasn't asking me to jump off a cliff. It just said to take notes. So,
I love it. And when Brenda says that things come through you, that was your experience too. It's like there's a river of inspiration above everybody. And if you just have the mindfulness to reach up and pull a little of it toward you, it can be truly amazing.
Yeah.
In fact, in Jonathan's, I'm sorry, Jonathan. Good.
Well, you had asked earlier about discovery, and I was interviewing a famous spiritual teacher in America named Adyashanti, a wonderful man, and I asked him his definition of spirituality, and he said, the best definition I have is it's a life of constant discovery. And I like that answer, because when you're learning new things, when you feel like each moment's new and you're getting something new, that's it doesn't get much better than that.
I feel like openness is like the sort of subtext of what we're all talking about that. And I guess I'm having a moment that you just referenced, Sherry, a moment ago, where something just came through. And it's like that somehow our culture, our current culture and climate, political, whatever you want to say, it's a closing of the mind. It encourages like, well, this is just what it is, and like if you're on this side, this is just what we believe, and that's it. And like, so I guess here's my question that just came into me. How can we remind people to stay open to ideas, other conversations, like other ways of being? How can we remind people? And it sort of goes back to the very first part of this heart wisdom, which was like the wisdom of a child, you know? Like, so how can we remind people to keep that mental door open, even just a crack?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I'm going to steal that for my next book as well.
All right.
Well, I think we're writing my next book right now. You know.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully the AI is taking notes.
I have my answer for you, Brenda. I do that for other people by doing it first for myself. And I did it yesterday on a political issue where I didn't come out beating a drum and pointing fingers. I said a softer truth. And a couple people contacted me privately. Are you okay? Because they're used to me being assertive politically. And this is not my time to be jumping into a fray. This is my time to not be gaslit or hornswoggled. I don't know really how I learned to say that phrase, but and so by modeling the kindness toward myself, by not becoming embroiled in the hate speech and the memes and the person perhaps in all of your minds, can't say for sure, has dyed red hair, or I guess it's orange. I have no influence over him, but I do have influence over the people that are triggered by him and have been hurt by him. And so that's how I manage these contradictory things, is by not telling people what they can do, because what I do might not work for them, but I'm modeling I'm narrating how I'm managing through.
Yeah, I have an answer to that, Brenda, that I actually think that can change people and open them up through good questions. And I asked 2 questions. Do you think it's better? First question is, do you think it's better to be open-minded and learning new things and discovering new stuff, or to be closed-minded and be a know-it-all and not be open to new ideas? Well, everybody will say, you know, open-minded, etc. And then I say, well, what has allowed you to be open-minded in the past, where you were learning new things, even from somebody who you might have disagreed with? What did you do that allowed that to happen? Because I think everybody has experienced that at some moment in their life. And by reminding them of its importance and that they've done it and that they have a way to do it, that helps them to then bring that ability into the next situation.
Love both those answers.
A friend of mine always says, as she's training a dog or making a new friend, she says, reward the behavior you want to see more of.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. I was thinking the same thing. And I was thinking Jonathan's question, they're so brilliant, because it's also just seeing the best in someone, or, you know, I guess that's my projection. I think that's the best, is that open-mindedness. And so seeing that, and who doesn't want that reflected back to them, right? Who doesn't want that reflected, that they're someone who's open and curious? It's beautiful. Yeah. I'm aware that we only have a few minutes left, and this has been so amazing, so many great things. Em, I know that you had brought us something, I believe, to close us out.
I did.
Yeah. Do you want to share that?
Thank you for asking. And I wrote this for us today. There are an abundance of answers, hacks, fixes, 5 steps to this and 10 quick steps to that. Answers. A door behind which questions wait. It is by welcoming, embracing, leveraging the questions that we create a personal metric. Not what is your 3-4 dance step for me, but my own unique ask and response, a liturgy of inquiry that begins to allow comfort in the not yet known, the stillness in that yet to be discovered, the continuing to mine for the truth of a matter that is uniquely my own, your own. Questions? Invite the I don't know yet. Ask. Ask again. Experience choosing the value of a deepening dive over an immediate, perhaps easy answer.
Beautiful.
Oh, what a gift. What a gift that, I mean, that you are, that this was, that you wrote something for us. And what a gift that the 3 of you would choose to be here to spend an hour. I know for each of you how precious that hour is. I do. And it just means the world to me. And I can tell by the people responding. And I know people yet to hear this when we share it, what an impact this will have. I'm so grateful.
I've really loved your book, Jonathan. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to that interior voice. I'm glad you did.
Likewise. Mwah. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the beautiful authors and friends who have been watching and commenting, and to everyone who will be watching. Come back again. It's the Heart Wisdom panel with Mango Publishing. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.